Thank you for showing your support for our community and for our students. Much appreciated. In your inboxes, board members, you have an electronic document that's a Google form, and you can select 7 candidates on that list, and we'll get instant data on who you voted for, and we'll take the top 7 candidates as the recommendation into the regular session.
Does everybody have access to the email okay?
I have access to email, but I don't see. I don't have it.
Nancy, if you tell me your
Travis.
email, I can shoot it.
2 p.m.
At about 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Oh,
Everybody in the room good? Director Cam, you're good?
Come your way again, Nancy.
Yes, I'm good. Sorry, I was trying to toggle between a few screens.
This may take a couple rounds.
thank you, Travis. I got it.
And folks on the Zoom meeting, you are welcome to stay right now. You are also welcome to attend to watch the virtual meeting at the regular session, but either way, we'll be notifying folks tomorrow morning about who were appointed to the 7 open seats. And then if you weren't, we'll be giving you some information about other leadership opportunities. Thanks again.
And just one of those, I don't know if Michelle's still with us, but have we closed applications for the budget committee yet? Right, so budget committee is still open, so we're blessed with the riches of so many people looking to participate in the district. So you're all wonderful candidates. If this isn't the job you end up being appointed to, there's other opportunities like the budget committee. Another thing to sort of make sure that I'm understanding, current members, Travis, who wish to continue are Joe Everton and Linda Osuna.
This group that presented tonight.
Yes.
Yes.
So of the 7 positions, 2 of the applicants are already on the committee. One is the chair of the committee, and both of those applicants wish to continue.
Yes, their 2-year term has expired, and they're re-entering their names for another 2-year term.
And that's Joe Everton and Linda Osuna.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Yep. So we're gonna wait until we see. We got 4 responses so far.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
It's so good. Oh.
So
Somebody did that.
there it is.
Yeah, you can vote for 7. You don't have to vote for 7, but you can vote for as many as 7. I wish I could vote for like 8 or 9.
Just waiting on yours, Nancy, right?
Yes, I'm in it right now. I just counted. Got it. Coming to you then. I got kicked out.
I think that's it, Travis. Yeah.
Despite that technological hurdle, this is better than dot. 27.
We got it. We'll capture the data. To see it. But we've got 7 top vote getters.
Oh, it's clear?
Yep.
Okay.
Angela Vargas, Annie Trumko, Deborah Doherty, Joe Everton, Linda Osuna, Michael Smith, and Shira Longstrand. So I'll give this to Rose, and then we can have that be the action item at the regular session. And those folks who we read the names of, you'll get an invitation to a Zoom link for Monday, November 1st, and that'll be our first meeting. So thank you again, and we'll be following up with emails tomorrow.
All right. Next agenda item is a follow-up update. I guess be a winter update pretty soon. But
Oh, Michael, you can kick it off. I'll kick it off. Chris is passing it to Jordan.
it says cabinet, it's everybody.
Yeah.
Who wants to go
Is
first?
everybody staring at? Yeah, I think Jordan. Jordan, over.
Yeah, we can go ahead and go to this. We can go to the next one.
Who has the slide advanced?
Next
I
slide.
think it's actually 2 forward.
Oh, better.
Just 2 items tonight. So the vaccine requirement update, we have finished in all aspects, basically the phase 1, so all of our classified licensed admin supervised tech staff. So we processed both the proof of vaccination and exceptions. There's just a couple stragglers on that, in that there was either additional processing that needed to be done or work with risk management, but in all aspects, we basically completed phase 1 and have a process now that we're checking our new hires as we bring new staff on. Phase 2, as you remember, was our supplemental staff, coaches, event staff, student teachers, bus drivers in training, and a host of others. We've completed that proof of vaccination verification for all of those that have been turned in. And we have begun processing exceptions, which previously we were holding to make sure and get the proof of vaccinations done first. But we have begun processing those exceptions for that group as well, for risk management. And phase 3, which would be our volunteers and independent contractors, we are beginning that process really and getting all of the necessary pieces put together for that, and we'll be getting that really in November. Hope to have all that ready to go here in the next week. That's it on the vaccine.
Okay, and then I am pleased to introduce our level directors again this evening to talk to you about how we support students in our schools by level. So our objectives are really to help you understand the systems in our schools that support our kids academically, behaviorally, socially, and emotionally. To see sample documents, we talk a lot about we chase our kids, we know them by name, strength, and need, and we wanted to kind of share with you some documents that we use just as artifacts for that work. And then finally, review how schools connect with families and how families connect with schools as we make sure that we support our students to be successful in our different levels. So I will hand it off to the level directors who will share their perspectives on their content.
All right, so we're gonna start with universal supports. Well, you need to have one, by the way. You want me to say it? Okay. All right. And you see on there 80%, and that indicates that 80% in an ideal world, we've 80% of our students, this universal supports works for our students. So we have those 20% of students that need those additional supports. And so we're going to talk about both of those things. Universal supports are those academic, social, and emotional supports that help all of our students, right? But it's the 80% that it really works for that amount. And then again, the 20% they need universal supports and additional supports to be successful. And so I wanted to tell a quick story about a first grade class. I was a principal at Eastwood a couple years ago, and there was a first grade class, and there's a student, and I'll say her name is Maite because that's my daughter's name. But she and her class in first grade, they were doing great. They had strong universal supports in their classroom. Their climate culture was strong. They had morning meetings. They had common expectations, strong routines and rituals in their class. They had that guaranteed and viable curriculum, strong instruction. But yet, Maite was struggling. She had some lacking skills, as we call them. And so we got together as a team, a professional learning community, and we kind of figured out, you know what, she has some lacking skills in reading, and she probably could have some extra support with her regulation. Sometimes she gets upset, so we want to help her calm down so she can focus on her work, and we call that getting back to the green zone. So we got some support set up for her, and those were additional supports. And so I just kind of wanted to give that example that she had the benefit, and all of the students in her class, for universal supports, but then she just needed a little bit extra, and we identified that. And it was really amazing. Years later, she's doing really well. She's making consistent progress, not only in reading, but with her social emotional progress. And that's just one example of how that works for all of our students.
So under that category of universal support, some of the biggest things that we do in our schools with our teachers is really that guaranteed viable curriculum for kids, and that is done through our professional learning communities. And at the elementary level, it's done by grade level, and typically at the secondary level, it's content area. So really just coming together, meeting and planning. I think we talked about this last time. One of the things that while the pandemic didn't bring us a ton of gifts, it did bring us the gift of collaboration in a more meaningful way. And I really feel like our staff this year, you can go into classrooms and you see consistent teaching in our classrooms among schools and in the grade level, in the different grade levels that are happening. And so I think really that time spent to look at their assessments, what they're doing in class, and spending the time on core instruction is so important as a universal support. Then to figure out what do students need beyond that. If we're doing good quality core instruction, what do they need beyond that? And again, in team and department and grade level meetings, those discussions are happening. In team meetings, also they're having conversations about what students need on the social and emotional side. We're doing kid checks. These PLC and team meetings typically happen bi-weekly in our schools, where they are just constantly looking at data on kids and looking at their social and emotional well-being in a really consistent way. So more than ever, this is happening, and we're starting to see more of our data come through and really making some decisions on what kids need now that we're in school 2 months. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to introduce myself. I forgot that. Audrey Neville, Executive Director of Schools. Elementary, I have 11 of them, and then I have all of our middle schools. So sorry. And we did want to show, Gail talked about some of the forms that we use and things that we have that are at our fingertips that are just really amazing. To the right here is our high school level students at risk form. This is through DCA, which our tech team, thank Jordan and his whole team for this. This is data at our fingertips that we can pull up and see where students are at in their attendance, where they're at in credits, where they're at in their grades, where they're at with behavioral needs. All of those pieces come into play, and that's always at our fingertips through DCA, which is a huge help to all of our staff as they're looking at students and tracking students. The other form that's there to the left is just a sample form of what PLCs might be talking about in their PLC meetings. What standards are we teaching that are upcoming? How are we going to assess students? What should students be able to do by the end of these next 2 weeks? What are we going to do for differentiation and being culturally responsive in our classrooms as well? So really, these are what our staff are talking about in those meetings, and being able to have that data at our fingertips and having these discussions is really important. So both of those forms just samples for you guys to see that maybe you have not seen them.
Yeah, I forgot to introduce myself too. Lindsay Garcia, Executive Director of Elementary Schools, and I supervise the dual language Title I schools as well as 5 other schools. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about universal support. So Audrey talked about a few things, and I wanted to speak about the morning meeting advisory. I really feel that we're fortunate at the district because we have morning meeting advisory in all of our schools. It's in our master schedules, and it's for a reason. We prioritize that, especially coming in after the pandemic. We know that our kids need to connect, and we need to do that relationship building as a classroom and as a community. So we spend time every day doing that. And we also spend time teaching those specific social emotional skills that our kids need. For example, teaching about empathy or friendships or problem solving, all of those, and helping kids to learn how to interact together. And so that's one example of universal support. Another one I want to talk about is climate and culture structures. Again, this is a priority because we know that we need our kids ready to learn, and that means that we need to have a warm and positive climate and culture in our school. And so some examples of how we do that is you can even see like this picture right here, kids walking down the hall. There's a common expectation in that school and in all of our schools that we walk in the hall this way. We use inside voices and we walk quietly from behind one another. And we do that. We directly teach our kids what our expectations are in every area of the school. So in the cafeteria and the playground. And so teachers are doing those lessons, and in fact, they might be doing them in morning meeting, that's part of it, is directly teaching what we expect, as well as in the classroom. We also do positive reinforcement. So, when I was at Eastwood, we have things called ELI. So we would, if we caught kids being respectful, safe, or responsible, we would say, you know what, I see you being really responsible walking down the hall quietly. So we do those kind of things. And we have assemblies where we celebrate all of that positive behavior that we've seen throughout the month. Many schools, they focus on a character trait, we call them, or a certain skill. So for example, in the month of October, a school might focus on perseverance. So the teachers directly teach, what does it mean to show perseverance? And then, at assembly, we might even have a group of kids do a play about what does that mean. I know that right now we're in, we can't really do an in-person assembly, but schools are being really creative and they have been doing virtual assemblies, which is really awesome. We also are really proud that every school has a school-based equity team, and that those teams are really important to push out those equity discussions and PD for our staff, as well as just supporting our teachers and providing that culturally responsive education that all of our students need.
I think just to add to that, it's been really important to have these two climate, culture, and morning media advisory these times with our students. Coming back from 18 months of not being in school, we have spent a lot of time with students just reworking like what it is to be a friend. How do we interact with one another? How do we understand space? How do we understand hands on our hips and bubbles on our lips? All of those things that we, just some reteaching and relearning of those systems and structures have been really crucial these last 8 weeks for our students because, they haven't been together and it's relearning a lot of those skills. And I think it's time well spent in our building, and it's really helping kids again learn to interact with one another in a meaningful way too, and just building that. Take it over to. Oh, this is you too.
Yeah. So another universal support is very important. Is family engagement, and there's many examples of this. I chose a picture from last year of my parent advisory committee meeting, and I know that they didn't all have their camera on, but the attendance was amazing, and we found that even though we were worried, like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? Will people connect virtually? But we found that many of our families, it's almost easier for them to connect. And I was just talking to Principal Pete, as I call him at Newberry, and he said he was all excited because last week at his PAC meeting, he had around over 20 families join virtually. And it was really amazing. It's just a great opportunity for families to engage, whether it's a PAC meeting or PTA. And just to not only to give information to our families, but also to hear their voice and to receive their ideas. And Principal P was really excited because he said that his PAC had requested a presentation from a staff member. Hey, we want to learn how to help our kids in math. And so he asked one of his amazing teachers, hey, can you do this for our PAC meeting? And he said that everybody just really enjoyed it, and that's kind of like the routine of what most schools do. They find out what are the parents asking for, and then we provide some kind of presentation on what they need. And then other, times that we engage with families are coffee chats. So I know that we can't actually have coffee, which is a bummer, but we still call it that. And we do it in the morning and sometimes in the evening. We trade off to make sure that we are engaging families in different schedules. But this is just another time to the principal can think of what's really on the minds of parents and kind of give that information, but also just open it up. What are some questions, concerns, ideas from parents as well? And then something that's been amazing is our Google Voice and our Remind. We've been using it consistently, and it's just awesome because it's that two-way communication. We found that parents love texting, and so even last year as a principal, I was like, wow, I've never communicated so much with parents. It is amazing because of the texting feature. And I had a teacher who is not bilingual in Spanish and English, but she said, you know what, my parents thought it was because of on Remind there is a way to translate. And she had to, finally, when she met face to face, she's like, you know what, I don't speak Spanish. But it was amazing because she could do that through that app. So, am I forgetting something? Yeah.
Right. Hands on your desk bubble. I'm gonna try that with the high school.
It'll work great. I love it. Don't totally love it.
I'm Fred Carpolo, Executive Director of High Schools. So the 80% of universal supports, those are things that we're doing for all students. The idea of those is really to be proactive. We want to intervene and support students before they are struggling. So we set up lots of these systems to support students academically and socio-emotionally. Additional supports, the other 20% of this imaginary pyramid, if you will, are more intensive supports for students that are needing those. All schools have them. They look different in different schools and different grade levels. Care teams are generally one that we use at our elementary school level, where that is where a team of teachers will get together and brainstorm and bring families in to problem solve and around individual student needs. Attendance teams do exactly what the name suggests. You'll get student attendance both individually and globally as a school, and develop some strategies for improving attendance or reaching out to individual students or families to support them with their attendance needs. Other supports that we have, particularly at the high school level, or at the middle school action team or kid talk meetings, where we take that care team idea of teachers getting together who know a student and brainstorming strategies to support that student, and we bring it up to the high school level. And that's what the work that we do around 9th grade success, and now we've expanded out to our 9th and 12th grade teams. That's those on-track meetings or other meetings that our teachers are joining around their grade level to look universally at the grade level. What are areas that our students are struggling with academically or socially that we need to support them, and let's develop that. The idea is to be proactive, to catch students before they fail, before they are struggling academically or socially. So we have all these additional supports that we build in at different levels, and we were hoping to leave a minute or two for questions. Defer back. Travis hasn't stood up to cut me off.
We just wanted to end with kids will do well if they can. It's a mantra that we have as a district, but we know kids always want to do well, right? But there's some barriers sometimes in their way, and so it's our job as educators to figure out how to help them succeed.
We just like pictures of kids, so we put those in there. But any questions for us?
I was very pleased to hear about the school-based equity teams. Hard thing to do when you don't look like the kids. How are you handling that?
That's a great question. I would say that, yeah, it looks different at each school, right? And we do have what we call affinity groups. So our teachers of color can join at a district level or also at the school level in some schools. But I agree with you. A lot of times that is difficult, so we want to make sure to support all of our staff in that work.
do the equity teams include people who are supporters? Do they connect with the
Oh,
kids
yes.
to know who is a support base for the child when the child doesn't look like most of the teachers?
Yeah.
You're all shaking your head going, yes. Got it.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
I did have a question just around, especially like at the morning time. What are the themes that you have been hearing? And you mentioned that it's been, almost 2 years now and the kids are coming back. Like, what are the things that are most difficult?
In terms of students at the elementary, personal space has been one that we've had to teach a little bit more about, just like, where your personal space is and having conversations and how we problem solve. I think it's been one because I think this is a great example, but in kindergarten, it's learning to share even because we haven't shared in the same way with 20 students before. And just learning, how we share, what makes a good friend and how we, have those conversations because we're home alone, you didn't necessarily have to share with anybody for a while. So we've been seeing that. I think in middle school, we're seeing this more around empathy and kindness and how we communicate to one another and social media. This month has been, I want to put the slide together.
Digital
Digital citizenship, there it is. And we've been doing a lot around digital citizenship because we've been seeing some things increase from that didn't necessarily increase that weren't there during the pandemic. So we've been doing some conversations around that. And I think it's been really good for kids to hear those and have conversations about what that really means or posting, what does that really mean for everyone to good conversations around that.
Similarly at the high school, same issues. Students relearning how to have academic conversations with each other, how to interact in class, particularly in the age of masks and social distancing. How do we tell students to keep apart, but also then interact? So it's a difficult balance sometimes.
Any questions? I don't want to keep us from our folks downstairs very much longer, but maybe in a board update, love to get an update on the pilot programs for the COVID testing at the 3 schools. I will declare our regular board meeting in session. We'll begin today, as we always do, with the flag salute. For reference, the flag is by that tool. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. As we gather in this virtual and physical setting, we would take a moment to acknowledge that our district service area is on the occupied traditional homelands of the Ifolati indigenous people, lands we now call Washington County and the state of Oregon. We thank them and their ancestors for being the original stewards of this land. We take this opportunity to offer gratitude for the opportunity to learn, work, and be a community on this land. We also acknowledge the systemic policies of colonization that have led to genocide, relocation, and assimilation that have impacted indigenous and native families, both past and present, and those who will be affected in the future. According to Kalapuya tradition, people have lived here since time immemorial. Indigenous people still live here today, having persevered through U.S.-sponsored war, displacement, genocide, and oppression. We honor the indigenous people whose traditional and ancestral homelands we stand on. The Tualatin Kalapuya, the Klamath, the Clackamas, the Tumwater, Malala, bands of the Chinook, and many other indigenous nations of the Columbia River. We believe it is important to acknowledge the ancestors of this place and recognize that we are here because of the sacrifices forced upon them. In remembering these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, and their ancestors. We also recognize the urban, indigenous, native, First People communities living in the metro area, which includes over 400 tribal nations. Our first proclamation tonight is from Director Kim online.
Hello, everyone. It's my honor to give the proclamation for the Native American Heritage Month. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. The Hillsboro School District knows that during National Native American Heritage Month, we celebrate the rich tapestry of Indigenous peoples and honor their sacrifices, which we recognize as intricately woven into the history of this community and country. The Hillsboro School District recognizes that Native Americans are descendants of the original indigenous inhabitants of what is now the United States. The Hillsboro School District honors Native Americans who have enriched our heritage and continue to add to all aspects of our society through their generosity of culture and the continued practice of teaching economic, environmental, and cultural sustainability. The Hillsboro School District is committed to engaging in dialogues led by tribal communities around the opportunities and work in which they are currently engaged in the areas of self-determination, sovereignty, and cultural preservation. The Board of Directors of the Hillsboro School District do hereby proclaim the month of November 2021 the Native American Heritage Month. We urge all community members to join us in recognizing Native American Heritage Month.
Thank you. Our next proclamation seems fitting that would be Director Allen.
Hello, maybe. Is it working? Yeah. Oh, great. Okay. So this is our American Education Week proclamation. The Hillsboro School District recognizes that public schools are the backbone of our society, providing young people with the tools they need to maintain our nation's values of freedom, civility, and equality. The Hillsboro School District knows that by equipping young Americans with both practical skills and broader intellectual abilities, schools give them hope for and access to a productive future. The Hillsboro School District recognizes that education employees, licensed, classified, and technical support staff, and administrators work tirelessly to serve our children and communities with care and professionalism. The Hillsboro School District encourages all community members to extend their commitment to public education and to the future of our children by supporting our community's schools through the contribution of time and energy. The Board of Directors of the Hillsboro School District do hereby proclaim the week of November 15th through the 19th, 2021, the American Education Week. We recognize American Education Week.
Thank you. Our last proclamation is from Director Ward.
Good evening, everyone. The Hillsboro School District recognizes that education support professionals are essential partners to the education process. The Hillsboro School District knows that educational support professionals provide a safe and healthy learning environment for students. The Hillsboro School District appreciates that education support professionals work tirelessly to serve our children and communities with care and professionalism. The Hillsboro School District honors the invaluable and often unsung work behind the scenes supportive teachers in delivering instruction, diverse talents, and tireless dedication to our students. The Board of Directors of the School District do hereby proclaim that 2021 National Education Support Professionals. We urge all community members to join us in recognizing that all education support professionals for their valued contributions to the Hillsboro.
You. At this point, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Approve the agenda as
It's been moved by Director Martinez and seconded by Director Allen that we approve the agenda as printed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
We just got a text saying that we
All right. I would have something to read for audience time, but at last check, we had no submissions for audience time. Is that still correct? All right. So I'll have to read that. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve our consent agenda.
I move that the Board of Directors approve the consent agenda as printed. Second.
It's been moved by Director Allen and seconded by Director Martinez that the Board of Directors approve the consent agenda as printed. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Now we have our action items portion of the evening, and during our work session, we heard from 27 applicants for our, heard from all, but we had 27 applicants for our 7 positions. So just want to emphasize how fortunate the Hillsboro School District is to have so many community members who are willing to contribute their time and serve on the committees we have. And another reminder that if you are interested in participating in this committee and are not chosen, there are plenty of other opportunities, including the budget committee, that could use your help. So,
Chair Watson, at this moment, could you take a moment to enlighten our audience on what the CCAC means?
oh, curriculum advisory. That's what CTA is. At this point, do we have a motion to appoint the new members?
I move that the Board of Directors appoint the slate of candidates identified during this evening's work session to the open positions on the CCAC as follows: Angela Vargas, Annie Tronco, Deborah Doherty, Joe Everton, Linda Osuna, Michael Smith, Shira Longstrand. Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Director Lopez and seconded by Director Martinez. And will I read them all as part of the restate? Okay. Have moved that the Board of Directors appoint the slate of candidates identified during this evening's work session to the open positions on the Community Curriculum Advisory Committee. Is there any discussion?
I also just want to thank all of the people that were able to speak tonight and let us know their intent to participate and their support for our school district. And also just reiterate that there are other opportunities to engage with our district. We have openings in our budget committee, and we would like to also encourage other people to consider that as another option. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries, and I welcome you all to your service in the district. Thank you very much. Our next action item is discussion of the elementary school contract in South Hillsboro. And see, Adam likes to stick around for the big ones, huh?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Happy to be here this evening and happy to award our last new elementary school contract. This contract is for a 600 student elementary school in South Hillsboro, and the contract, the low contractor was Kirby Nagleton Construction, who also happened to build quality elementary. So we're very happy to have them back in the fold and happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have a question for Mr. Ward? Don't worry about it, on that side.
Okay, I was just curious on some terms that were in the packet. So MDF and IDF, what are those?
MDF is their technology. Go ahead.
Okay, great. And IDF? Perfect.
That's why I like women too.
Thank you.
I just have one question. The amount that they awarded seems really low for a school, and I was wondering, is that consistent? Is it the same? Is it because they're not doing the actual construction?
Well, it's a little lower because remember this is phase 2 of the project. We awarded phase 1, which was site work earlier in the guess it was last winter. And that work is all done now. So if you drive by the site, you'll see a couple of parking lots. And the entire site has been prepared for this next phase.
Okay, so just being clear, the 27,000 that was awarded is just for phase 2.
This is just phase 2, correct?
Thank you.
27
That
million.
makes total sense. Thank you.
I think there's some, yeah. So the groundwork has already been done. Like the land work is already done.
Everything outside of the building itself, yeah, and the playground.
One last question. Why didn't we wrap this up in the first part of it? And how did this become a phase 1 and a phase 2? Normally on a school construction, it all goes together and they bid on the entire project.
It does. We chose this method this time because we had the time, basically. We were originally going to open the school in September of 2022. But when we made the determination to push it back a year, it bought us a little more time. We were able to do the dirt work, and it required a lot of movement of things to be done over a summer period rather than over a winter. And it was just much cleaner, and we feel like we got a better price.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Totally makes sense. Yes. Yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
And I don't want to rob too much from the later presentations, but Rosedale, 52 or 3 more students this year. We comfortable with the capacity at Rosedale while we hold up on this one for a year?
Yep, we're feeling good about it, yes.
Capacity is
That
600 or
school
so?
also has a capacity of 600, and we feel
It's
that.
at 408, 402,
Yep.
something like that? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions for Adam? Director Allen.
That's the next one, but I can do it. Why not? Let's do it.
It's not.
I move that
Oh,
Board of Directors award the construction of a new 600-student elementary school in South Hillsboro to Kirby Nagelhout construction in the amount of $27,475,000.
Second. Was that Director Lopez? Okay. It's been moved by Director Allen and seconded by Director Lopez that the Board of Directors award the construction of a new 600 elementary school in South Hillsboro to Kirby Nagelhout Construction in the amount of $27,475,000. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The motion carries. The next item for action is the letter of interest for a real estate transaction.
Are you ready for a motion?
I am.
All right, I move that the Board of Directors approve the terms of the letter of interest to sell 11.88 acres at a cost of $340,000 per acre, and to direct district staff and district realtor to move forward with the development of a purchase and sale agreement, PSA, to finalize the sale of the property. I second.
It has been moved by Director Allen and seconded by Director Ward that the Board of Directors move to approve the terms of the letter of interest to sell 11.88 acres at a cost of $340,000 per acre, and to direct the district staff and the district realtor to move forward with the development of a purchase and sale agreement, PSA, to finalize the sale of the property. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right. Our next action item involves the renaming of the MEC campus. I think Casey, do you have some presentations you want to give to us?
Yeah, that's a presentation. This, as you remember, this topic was on board for 30-day review that the board voted to have on first reading last month. Since that time period, I have not received any comments on this, so I just would like to hand it back to the board of directors for a final vote.
Does anybody have any further questions for Casey?
I'd love to make a motion.
All right.
I move that the Board of Directors approve the naming and renaming of MEC West to Oak Street Campus, Pathway Center, David Hill Building, Miller Community Center, and Hillsboro Community Garden.
Second.
I just want to ask one more time. Well, I guess that's all right. It's been moved by Director Thomas and seconded by Director Martinez that the Board of Directors approve the naming and renaming of MEC West to Oak Street Campus, Pathway Center, David Hill Building, Miller Community Center, and Community Garden. Is there any discussion?
Hillsboro Community Garden.
Right. And that's sort of it's already called Hillsboro Community Garden. We're not renaming that part. Does this need to be in here? Or does it matter?
Did it have a formal name?
Yeah.
I don't
Oh. Okay. I think there's some signage too, right? Yeah. So we're just making it official. Okay. Okay. All right. So it just sort of happened over time. All right. Okay. So any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Our final action item of the night involves the legacy of Director Martin Granum, where we make note of any gift or donation over $5,000. And Michelle, is she online? Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
Would you like to give us any information on this one?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that as of September 30th, we did receive a donation from Kaiser Permanente to Hillsborough School District for the Thriving Schools Playbook activation in the amount of $24,999. And we'll be using that contribution to support a halftime temporary education liaison in the Office of School Performance, focusing on student supports. Thank you.
Is there any questions for Michelle?
Yes, I do.
Go for it.
Because I couldn't catch the last part of what she said. So could you say again what the playbook activation?
Okay, sorry. I think that was Monique, and I lost the last part of your sentence. But I think what I wanted to share was that these funds will be used to support a halftime temporary education liaison in the Office of School Performance, focused on student wellness.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Beth has some additional context?
Grant funds that they were offering to a limited number of districts. And so I then kind of collaborated with Olga Acuna, our Executive Director of Federal Programs. And then she worked with folks at Kaiser to develop this idea about utilizing the grant funds to expand their capacity with family outreach liaisons. And that idea was accepted. So it's kind of like a grant, kind of like a donation. The nice part about it is it doesn't have quite the amount of strings and reporting that a lot of grants do. So it counts for us as a donation, but we're using it to expand that family outreach liaison team.
Okay, thank you. I have a follow-up question to that then. So if this is for a temporary, how long is this for? If the grant's for 20, just shot 25,000.
Right.
How long will that support that temporary?
This school year.
This school year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Follow-up question then. What do we do for next year? And will we be, I guess perhaps this should be to our CFO, will we be able to come back next year and do this again?
I don't know. I really don't know this time. It's saying we're coming out of necessary. And so that's why we have fortunate that capital and
Absolutely. Understood. Thank you.
Sure.
leadership around academic return on investment. And so I think sometimes when we are offered these opportunities, what we do is we create indicators to know if something's been successful or it's had an impact, which allows us to say, wow, that was great, but we can use our resources in this direction instead and try something new. Or that was so great, we want to keep funding it. So I think, part of the privilege of being in education is we get to pilot things and try to see what serves our community and students best. So I'm excited for the opportunity, and hopefully we'll get some great outcomes and find some resources to continue it.
Thank you, Dale. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
All right, would anybody like to make a motion?
I have
Oh, one more question, sorry.
Sorry to follow up on that. So do we have examples of what that looks like, what these supports would be? What this is being used for?
So we can certainly share that with the board in this week's update, so you can see what Olga proposed and what they approved, and it has the scope of services in there.
Any further discussion? Anybody like to make a motion?
I move that the board of directors accept the donation of $24,999 from Kaiser Permanente to the Hillsboro School District for the Thriving Schools Playbook activation. Second.
It's been moved by Director Lopez and seconded by Director Allen that the board of directors accept the donation of $24,999 from Kaiser Permanente to the Hillsboro School District for the Thriving Schools Playbook activation. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are to the reports and discussion portion of the evening, and we'll begin with our CFO online.
Thank you. Yes, our financial report. I think I would like to just give a quick shout out to both the human resources team and our tech services department. I spoke a little bit in there about the vaccination verification requirements, and that it sounds pretty mundane, but it was a pretty big effort and very swift in order to make sure that we were not just in compliance with the governor's order, but making sure that we were able to provide a safe place for our staff and students as we continue to return to school. Also, a quick note on the student incident report. There was an error in the column for 2021-22 total incidents. We have just one student incident for this month, not 4, thankfully, and none were severe enough to call 911. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the financial data and our cash flows.
I don't see any questions, Michelle. I would just like to give a shout out and kudos to Michelle and her team for all the work they've done. For those who follow the district closely know that we are in our bargaining sessions with our classified and licensed unions, and that involves a lot of discussion of financial information. And so that department has been busy creating presentations to distribute in those sessions. And so thank you for the extra work on your plate and delivering as exemplary as you always do. If there's nothing further from Michelle, then we will go to the Division 22 assurances by Travis.
Thank you. There's a slide next to this one, and I'm not going to read all these slides to you because I think you have to pack it. But I thought that the Oregon Department of Education did a good job releasing a template slide deck for districts to be able to discuss Division 22 with school boards and community this year. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the statutes and all that go into the section Division 22. But this slide deck would show you some of the highlights this year and some of the changes because of the situation with COVID and our ability to comply with all of the different statutes around education in Oregon. I'll just pause for a second. It'll make more sense with slides from the
If it's not at the end of this slide deck, this is the wrong slide. It's, I think we just have them, what looks sort of like slides in our packet.
Oh, well, good. I'll fast forward. I'm glad you have the slide. The assurances process is really strict, and so we all are having to submit the same templates across the state. Some of the slides will describe how it is that what the timeline is for that. We're supposed to make a public announcement of our compliance with Division 22 by November 1st. There are some changes for Division 22 for last school year, and so each year we report 1 year in arrears that this is our compliance with school year 2020-2021 OARs. The following rules were waived entirely last year. The rule around assessment of essential skills, the kindergarten assessment, and the identification of academically talented and intellectually gifted students. So because of COVID-19, those were assessments that we were not expected to do last year. There was one rule that was put in place only for school year 2020-2021, which was the Ready School Safe Learners Guidance. And I just want to thank everybody in this room for our being in compliance with that entire set of obligations for our operational plan and everything we did to keep students safe and reopen schools. There were also 3 new rules that went into effect beginning in 2020 and 2021. One was the annual report on restraint and seclusion. One was the Every Student Belongs Act. The other was Suicide Prevention Plan. And you know that HSD was a front runner in all those different areas. And we may have been the first to do the All Students Belong, now called Every Student Belong Act. So thank you for taking quick action on that in HSD. We will be posting our report online. It's already posted, and there's a hyperlink. I don't know if it's live in the document that you got, but it shows that we're compliant in 55 out of 57 areas with approved action plans in 2 areas. Those areas are the required instructional time and the instructional materials adoption cycle. So on the front of required instructional time, we think that we provided with synchronous and asynchronous learning the baseline required hours of instruction for all students in HSD last year. However, we know that because of challenges that families faced, including a safe place to learn at the kitchen table and technology needs and just the ability of students to persevere in doing the asynchronous learning pieces, we can't guarantee that every single student access those instructional hours. And so what we told ODE was, our plan for this year is to restore full instructional days and meet those hours by a long shot, which we do each year. On the front of instructional materials, Board Member Ward, you had asked what is the action plan for getting back on cycle? And what we did is instructional leaders in HSD met with a team from ODE, one of their directors, and then experts in each of the curriculum areas where we're off cycle. And we put together a plan that shows us adopting from the state list in 2021, 2022 for world languages, in 2022, 2023, health, PE, math, and language arts independent adoptions, and then in 2023, 2024, social science adoption. Chair Watson asked via email, why would we not sync up with some of the new language or social science standards that are going to be going into place in future years? And the answer to that is that we are. Part of our independent adoption is that we'll do a phased approach with the different standards that are coming through in civics education and ethnic studies standards. We're already in the process of giving our teachers the materials they need and access to licenses, digital licenses to deliver on those standards. Those standards are live as of this year, many of them, and they'll be required in 2024, 25, I believe. And so we're going to be ahead of the curve in our independent process. So at the table in that planning session was our social science leader for the state of Oregon, advising us on what are the best resources we have right now, because none of those new standards align with the former social science adoption. So in a fast moving world where digital resources are updated all the time and new standards come into play, we have actually taken on the practice of independently adopting most of what we do and then supplementing with the latest materials that are available in partnership with other districts and with ODE. So those are good questions. I hope that high level plan kind of helps understand how we get back on cycle. And I'm happy to answer more questions and go over the plans in more detail in the process in the future if that would be helpful to anybody. So our next steps with Division 22 are to have that status posted on our website, and that we anticipate a year from now reporting that for this school year we've met in all areas, probably mentioning that our action plan is not yet complete in the area of instructional materials adoption. That'll be an ongoing process where each year I mention that, which I have for 5 years now. So thank you for your support with this process, everybody who's been involved in it. And I think we can be really proud in HSD that we are compliant with just the baseline in all these different legal areas, and that we surpass in most. Happy to answer any questions about Division 20.
Chair Watson, I have a question. Forgive the competitive spirit within me, but how do we rate compared to other districts our size, namely the Big Four?
I don't know, because we don't ask them how they're doing in complying with the law. So I do have a couple partners in other districts who we remind each other, hey, it's time to do Division 22 assurances. What's your process? But we don't actually compare like.
So ODE doesn't summarize that information and publish?
They publish all of our Division 20. We have to publish each of our Division 22 compliance documents, but there's not a rating. Like, we don't score high because we're compliant in all areas, whereas other districts score low because they're not. It's more of like if a district is out of whack with some legal requirement, ODE comes in to provide technical support on how to get back on track. It's not a competitive game.
Okay.
We could make it one, but I would have to do some research to figure that out.
Thank you.
Other questions? What I had asked Travis through email was I suppose as our representative on the LPC, I probably should have brought this up sooner, but yes, the legislature passed 3 that I know of changes for social studies, civics requirement, and graduation. So I mean, I appreciate, thanks for the information about how we're staggering the timeline. So it feels like we won't have to change our social studies curriculum and then revise it again when the law becomes effective. We'll be doing it just in time before it becomes effective. And would I be right to assume that our Malavirus Vilas adoption means that that's why language arts isn't on this list anymore? Right. Outstanding. And so if any of the community curriculum advisor members are still listening, Travis just laid out part of your roadmap for the next cycle. If there are no further questions, then we'll do our next report with October 1st enrollment. That's a comment.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So tonight, I just want to point out some of the highlights from the October 1st enrollment report. So as you can see in the numbers, the district has seen a decrease in enrollment this past year, particularly in elementary, but an increase in enrollment for secondary, particularly high school. And if you look on page 64, you can see those numbers, and we have had some thoughts around that. Part of it is the vaccination status of our students that are in secondary, and the access to vaccination, I think, is in part the reason why we have seen an increase in enrollment and a desire for students to be in school learning with each other. And so we have seen, we're happy and pleased to see that increase. We have also seen a decrease in kindergartners, which is also reflected in the enrollment across Washington County. And if you look on page 65 on bullet number 2 and 3 there's indication that we are seeing about 4,500 fewer students across the 8 districts in Washington County. So these are trends that are not only happening in Hillsboro, but are trends that we're seeing in other districts as well. And then some information that we have from the state is that the Oregon Department of Education shows that statewide that we're down approximately 22,000 students in the primary grades. And so something that Mike Scott shared earlier on was just the decrease in birth rates that are happening. And so those indications are there. So just wanted you to be aware of those trends. Also, something that we're seeing is an increase in our Hillsboro Online Academy enrollment. And you can see in the data there, we have an increase, particularly in our K-6 students. We have 523 students and 303 in 7 through 12. As of today, we have increased to almost 1,000 students at Hillsboro Online and K-12. About 950 of those are that are learning and going to learning online. And we have concurrent enrollment, which students are enrolled at another school and then taking some coursework through Hillsboro Online. So that's something I wanted to point out in the enrollment pieces for that. And then something, as we think about the future and we think about talking about the South Hillsboro Elementary School being built, we are seeing an increase in enrollment at Rosedale Elementary School. And so we've had about 60 more students in that school this fall. And so that will be well in line with our projections for fall of 2023. So if you turn to the last page of the report, you can see that we have demographics that represent a richly diverse student population that has been growing in the last 5 years. And something that I also want to point out is that we have really made a point of hiring diverse educators to represent our students, and we're seeing an increase in those numbers. And I would say as of the end of July, we were seeing about 48% of the staff that we were hiring at that time that were diverse. And so I think, that is a trend that we're seeing and goal that we have in our human resources department that is being supported through efforts of our administrators as they hire staff to represent our students. Are there any questions that you have?
So I'm not familiar with City View charter schools or staff and how I saw that some of their numbers were.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Monique. So that we don't necessarily allocate, staffing for City View, but they are considered a part of our district that we sponsor. Is that correct? We sponsor them. And so we have about 259 students in the Hillsboro area that attend City View. So for the purposes of like our overall numbers, they're considered a part of that. But when it comes to staffing and allocations, there's some supplemental supports that we offer, but we don't offer direct staff for that.
I'll just add to that. Charter schools need a district sponsor, so we are the district sponsor for City View. And what happens is we receive the money in from ODE, and then we pass that through to City View. With the percentage that we hold back, we also provide some of the infrastructure things for that school. So, for example, we provide tech support. We provide some of the specialists there as well. So that's how that partnership works.
I do have a subsequent question. From an HR perspective, is this information going to be shared with our demographic consultants? And I find this very interesting because this has been almost contradictory to what we just discussed about the expansion of the district, some of the decisions that we've made. We seem to have been on point over a long period of time, but it stands to reason that we might be off the mark, especially with our numbers going down, which was interesting. So I'm just bringing it up that it is definitely in contradiction to what we just heard with regard to the expansion, but then our numbers are going down.
Across the state last year, there was a 3% drop in enrollment in districts. And so what we've seen is during the pandemic, of course, there's families making different decisions about their educational experience for their kids. So more homeschooling, that kind of thing. So that was a statewide trend. It used to be when we had a demographer come in, we could take that report and we could take it to the bank for 4 to 5 years. And we would have a demographer come in every 4 or 5 years. And now we're having to do that much more often because the trend is not what it used to be. So for the last couple of years, we have reduced in enrollment. The plus side that we have there is that we have North Plains and we have South Hillsboro that is projected to continue to grow. I want to say there's 4,000 homes in South Hillsboro by the time it's built out. And so we will overcome the decrease that we've seen, but we won't likely grow at the percentage rates that we were 10 years ago. It's just with the birth rate slowing, that just hasn't been possible. For the last couple of years, we've seen fewer kindergarten kids come in than we've seen seniors leave. And that's a fairly common trend in our country.
So we have the dynamic of a pandemic.
Yep.
And then we also have low birth rate.
Yeah.
And then we also have the general population expansion of the same community. So we've got multiple things that are actually impacting.
Yeah, and it's why we slowed down by 1 year the elementary school in South Hillsboro, and it's why we feel comfortable looking for land elsewhere.
Got
So,
it.
yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you.
One more
Sure.
question. Kind of on there on page 64, it's 137 registered through Northwest Regional Service. So what is that? Private school or
Some of those could be homeschooled students as well that are a part of that, or they may be choosing to do some online learning and so forth. And so I don't have that all disaggregated out, but we just indicate that that's where they've chosen to register. She said they would be captured through Hillsboro, but those students would be receiving some of their learning outside of the district in specialized programs.
I kind of suspected that 137 was separate from homeschooling. So
Other question? I'll just add, yeah, I don't think we've normalized from the pandemic. We're all sitting here wearing masks where 2 years ago we wouldn't have been doing it, maybe 2.5. Geez, how long is it? Oh, time has no meaning. Yeah, I don't feel like we're normalized quite yet. I think I would just commend the district administrative team and our educational partners for the nimbleness and flexibility they showed in staffing up HOA to accommodate for this relatively, things were not very certain going into the beginning of this year, and I think our numbers at HOA changed pretty dramatically, pretty quickly. And I just want to commend the administrative team and our district partners for the flexibility and accommodating all of those students in the way we did at HOA. So. All right. The next discussion is about educator evaluation flexibility, and it's Hannah and Mike who wants to go first.
I'll kick us off. So we just have a situation here where we wanted to give you guys notice that we have received communication from Oregon Department of Education that allows for some flexibility and adaptability when it comes to conducting the summative evaluations for our contract educators. And just a reminder that folks are in their first 3 years are considered probation. And so what this does, it allows us to kind of put our focus through ODE's guidance on navigating implementation of mental health and social safety protocols so that we can focus on really supporting our probationary staff. And those are the folks that are often newer and affording them opportunities to be on cycle for evaluation this year. And so also our temporary staff will be a part of that process. So our on-cycle contract teachers, you can see in the table listed below, the off-cycle for this year. They would continue to complete their self-reflections and student learning growth goals like they normally would. And then they would be moved back on cycle for evaluation in 22-23. And so all of our contract teachers who are off cycle this year and next are on. And so this is something that OD has put forward and had conversations in the right direction about supporting our staff and their well-being and our academy for their students.
This is something that we have been requesting of ODE for the last several months, and it really is to provide relief during a time. We've got staffing short. Literally, our principals oftentimes they're doing the recess duty, then they're going in and assisting with serving lunch, and then they're on to the next thing. In addition to that, the number of needs coming back, social emotional behavior, assisting at this time. This is a way to relieve some of the pressure of doing these evaluations. takes a considerable amount of time, and it basically pushes those back.
So I guess my follow-up question is, you said HEA is in agreement with this? I wanted to, because my first thought was, does the union agree with this? And I think you're telling me that they are. Yes?
Yes, we had.
Director Lopez?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to also ask a clarifying question that if this is being pushed out as well, but if there are any concern that the district still has the ability to, have uh, some evaluation if there's a need to do it ahead of the schedule, we still have the ability to do that. Yeah, they wouldn't be on evaluation cycle per se, but we believe in supporting people. And, I think one thing that we want to do is that people come back from being in CDL and those things, we're going to provide those additional supports. And I feel Dale wants to add anything to that around making sure that we're supporting people in the best way possible as they move to being on.
And this does not eliminate our ability to step in and address a situation that needs addressed. If that's what if that's what your question is, we can still.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
We have one AR to discuss. It's been posted to your packet changes. Do you have anything you want to add, Mike?
I'll just mention here, this does not require board action, but it does require notification. You'll see here that for the KHAR, public gifts and donations to the district, that there's been some process and timeline adjustments there. Pretty straightforward stuff. Myself or Michelle can answer any questions for you on this one. No action required.
With the board?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment on when I was so in the packet it's for point number 4, I think the in for the balance is in. Start 275. That structure there, the in needs to go.
Gotcha. Will do. Thank you.
Any other questions? This is mostly just language suggested by OSBA or whatever.
This is language that, well, it's an AR, so it's our own.
Yeah. Okay.
But this cleans up the process so that it's accurate. I mean, it's the bottom line. This is what actually happens.
All right. Okay. HCU and HCA reports. I see. Do we have anybody online? Yeah, I see Jill here. Who would like to go first? Melody would like to go first. Can we unmute Melody? Or Melody, unmute yourself? Surprise, you're first.
Hi, welcome back, I guess. Yeah, it's been since February of 2020 since I stood here. So it's nice to be in person again. So good evening, Chair Watson, fellow board members, Superintendent Mike Scott. My name is Jill Golay, and I'm the president of the Hillsboro Education Association. Last year when June finally arrived, we thought, whew, so glad that's over. We thought we could reclaim normalcy with our students and in our schools. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. In fact, this year is perhaps worse than the year before. We are experiencing the most stressful time that any of us have ever encountered in education. Yet, educators continue to show up every day, putting forth their very best effort to meet students' needs. I know that the board has already heard about staffing shortages and how shortages have impacted our district, and about the hard work that HR has been putting in to recruit and hire new staff. But what I want to make sure you understand tonight is what the staff is experiencing in the meantime, and the urgent attention that needs to be focused on retaining the current staff that we have. I'd like to try to describe why educators are barely hanging on. Over the past several weeks, I've heard from educators who have reached out to me sharing some of the challenges that they are experiencing and asking for support when navigating this school year. And tonight I'd like to list a handful that have bubbled up to the surface. Unmanageable and unsustainable workload that has been leading to anxiety and burnout. A much wider array of student, academic, social, and emotional and behavioral needs than we've ever seen before are equipped to support. Time needed to build relationships with students that we desperately need or to individualize instruction to meet students' needs. Classrooms that continually have students in quarantine, causing students to need individualized instruction, reteaching, and interventions to keep them abreast of the learning in the classroom, to help with answer questions and to clarify their assignments, and to get them caught up upon their return to their brick and mortar classroom. COVID protocols that can be overwhelming and confusing to staff in trying to understand which students or classrooms should be quarantined or rather disadvised of a positive case in the classroom. And planned time that is being used to cover for colleagues due to daily stuff shortages rather than to plan, assess student work, or connect with families. It is essential that we make sure that working conditions are manageable for educators and our school staff so that we are able to make it through this year. This is why we are advocating for meaningful workload relief to be implemented as soon as possible, including taking things off the plate, creating the time that we need to do our jobs and support our students. I truly appreciate the current collaboration and listening ear that HSD administration has offered. HEA has been in conversation with OSP, HR, and Superintendent Mike Scott to see what can be done to support staff. We have some ongoing meetings planned to work together, and I really appreciate the opportunity. We want to identify some of those solutions, and HEA has asked its members to complete a survey this week so we can put together some data about how folks are doing, whether or not they are considering other career options, and what solutions we need to help make this year more manageable. We also know that these solutions are not unique to HSD and HEA, and we have been working with our fellow local union leaders in Beaverton, Portland, Eugene, and Salem-Keizer. They too are asking the same questions of their members so we can work together to advocate for ways to support our educators. To the board tonight, I'd like to encourage you to ask questions. Our members really like it when you ask questions. To find ways to connect and talk with teachers and educators, and to please continue to collaborate with us because we value your collaboration so we can think about ways that we might find relief. And lastly, I'd like to address the HSD families. We see you. We know that this has been difficult on families as well. We know that your children deserve the best quality educators, and we are committed to offering every student the opportunity to excel, succeed, and thrive. Thank you.
It looks like we have Melody available.
Yes. Sorry, I had to get things figured out here. Okay, so hello. So as we know, there is a shortage of all staff in K-12 schools. Between resignations and a lack of new applicants, the district is facing a staffing shortage of unprecedented severity. It is important to retain the classified staff currently employed at the district, while at the same time recruiting new employees, so vital to serving students. Many districts are compensating their employees accordingly in order to maintain its workforce by encouraging candidates to apply and join those districts. We had a discussion with Mike and HR, thinking outside the box on some ideas on how to attract new employees to HSD. And we look forward to continuing conversations as well. A stable workforce will serve our students better. HSD should strive to be the destination district, not just a transitional opportunity. We look forward to collaborating more closely with the districts on a solution. And like teachers, classified staff are being pulled in many different directions, which is causing a lot of stress. They are feeling burnt out, and many are considering resigning and retirement. And many are moving in that direction. We are glad to hear that most of our classified staff was vaccinated or able to get one of the exceptions. This will keep our regular staff in the classrooms and on the school sites, supporting the students and retaining those relationships that we all work so hard to create and build. Bargaining is moving forward and we are making progress. We have tentatively agreed on some articles and we look forward to continuing the process. And thank you and good night.
Okay. We're almost at the conclusion of our meeting. Superintendent's time.
All right, thank you. A couple things to share tonight. First of all, I'd like to just recognize our bus drivers. Last week was Bus Driver Appreciation Week, and we've been fortunate in the district that we have been able to enjoy really uninterrupted service to this time so far. As you've heard from both Jill and Melody, we do have staffing shortages, and we have big concerns about if we're going to be able to maintain the level of service that we currently are. But our bus drivers that we currently have and the entire transportation staff have done whatever it's taken to make this happen on a daily basis. So we have people that are in dispatching jobs or mechanics that drive on a regular basis because we're short staffed. And despite these shortages, we've been able to deliver this level of service so far. So just a big shout out to the bus drivers and the transportation staff for everything that they've done to allow that to happen. We do continue to partner with the community in order to serve them better. Just this evening, we had Pointer Middle School had a reopening of the food pantry, and in conjunction with that, they made that a vaccination site. For us. So we had 143 vaccinations that we were able to deliver, as well as 50 food boxes, all in the same week. So just a huge thanks to our schools that continue to find ways to partner and serve the community. Have had the opportunity to do a couple school visits this week so far, and I would just like to recognize the resiliency of our students and our staff. You heard from both Jill and Melody the toll that this takes on the staff, and we continue to be in partnership with them and have conversations and do problem solving with them. But if you were to see it from the student experience, it's remarkable how smoothly it's going, in spite of all of the things that are being dealt with, whether it's the mitigation strategies or the staffing shortages. The student experience is really better than we would have predicted at this time, and that is a huge thanks to our staff. That is the reason that is happening. I happen to be at a school today at the end of the workday, at dismissal time, and a teacher was leading her class out to the bus area, and I mean, she flat out just looked tired. I mean, it had been a long day for her, and she was a kindergarten teacher, and the first months of kindergarten are, we'll just call it a challenge. Not that the other months are any easier, but the first month's incredibly challenging. And as they're walking out to the bus, one of the little kids says, "Is that the end of the school day? I can't believe it." The teacher's face would have said, "Yes, that's the end of the school day." And I just wanted the opportunity to thank all of our staff. Like I mentioned before, the student experience really is relevant and it's complete, and it's been meaningful for our students. So thank you to all of our staff for making that happen.
All right, board director's time. I guess we'll start at the end and work our way back this way like we often do. Director Lopez.
Thank you. Not too much to share tonight. Just wanted to remind anyone who's still listening and our guests here, especially because our student reps aren't here, that I think Seth has informed that there's a play at Glencoe, so I wanted to plug that in to our community to make sure to go out and support our students that are starting back up to put on these extracurricular activities that are really important to them. It's what really I think pulls them more into school is all these really awesome opportunities to get to work on passion projects or activities that they really enjoy doing. And so Saf, one of our student reps, is doing one of those at Glencoe, and it's I think the start opening night is tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So please go online. You can buy it at Glencoe's web store, any tickets, and just a huge shout out and thank you to all of our classified and licensed staff because of all the work that they are doing. Um, it does not go unnoticed, and I can see, especially with my high schooler coming home from school. And actually, this weekend I was watching an oldie but goodie. If anybody remembers Kindergarten Cop, when he comes out home after the first day of school and just like flops, and that's exactly what it's been happening with our kids as well. And I can only imagine our teachers as well. These days are long, but I'm very thankful for all of their work and their commitment to our district. So thank you.
I'd like to say thank you as well to our audience and for being here. I'd like to thank the staff for all their help once again with all the questions that I have that I pepper you guys with. I appreciate that and the timely responses. I don't have anything other than that tonight. Thank you.
I hope everyone has a safe and socially distant Halloween if you celebrate.
Director Kim, would you like to go now where your chair would be, or would you rather wait to the end?
No, I'm happy to go now. Thank you. No, I just want to give a huge shout out to Jordan and the tech team for making this hybrid model possible. I'm home with a sick little baby, so appreciate just being able to tune in online. And that is all that I had for tonight. Thank you.
I don't know much to say, but I would agree that the student experience is the same as ever. My daughter comes home, tells me about her day, and she loves it. So this week they're having Spirit Week at McKinney, so it was Weird Hair Day today, and so yeah, so she's enjoying it, and she loves school. It's over, too fast, I think. So thank you, teachers.
Yeah, I would just extend my thanks as well. And, I think the experience might be summed up pretty well by a Facebook friend of mine who's a teacher in Illinois who thinks that, no matter how many years you've been educated, this is probably the hardest one you've ever had. So, thanks to everybody. And if you go to the Glencoe play on Thursday, you'll see me there. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Our meeting is adjourned.